Welcome to the Awakened Goddess Show, your source for inspiration, wisdom, and personal discovery. The place to learn from a diverse mix of mentors, metaphysical experts, spiritual leaders, and best-selling authors from around the world. I'm Angela Wilkinson, attraction coach and founder of The Goddess Next Door. Join me as I explore the minds of my masterful guests while they share powerful insights and easy-to-use tools you can start using right away. Now, let's tap into the energy of the Awakened Goddess and be enlightened by today's guest. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Angela Wilkinson, and welcome to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. As a full-figured woman who struggled with her weight for years, Sarah Jenks, the founder of Live More, Weigh Less, finally found the key that all diets were missing. After bouncing between fad diets and struggling with her body image, Sarah realized she had been waiting on the weight, waiting to be thin before she got that great job, the great relationship, lived a life beyond her wildest dreams. When Sarah stopped waiting on the weight, she finally did all of those things that she had been putting on hold for years, going for her ideal job, flirting with her dream guy, going out dancing and living a fully engaged life. In her words, the late-night pity snacking ceased with all the joy and activity this new lifestyle brought and finally created a body she loved. Now, as having the most popular non-diet weight loss program on the internet, she believes that every woman deserves to have their ideal body, which is not looking like your 23-year-old self, your best friend, or your favorite celebrity. It's about creating your perfect body for your phase of life, constitution, and lifestyle. But before I welcome Sarah to the show, I'm thrilled to invite you to join Spark Society, your virtual home to nurture your spirit and soul. Spark Society is a monthly lifestyle subscription bringing you a gorgeous source of inspiration, thought-provoking information, and entertaining content mixed with a bit of magic to help you create and live a life you love. Each month, you'll get a themed collection of spiritual brilliance and amazing resources to explore different areas of your life and help you thrive. As a Society sister, you'll get everything you need delivered to your inbox, full of exclusive content coming to you from myself and your favorite Awakened Goddess Show guests. Each month, we will explore a metaphysical or lifestyle topic in a fresh, fun way, and you'll have the opportunity to connect with other fun, aspiring, spiritual-minded women like you. So come on over to theawakenedgoddess.com, click on the Join Spark Society button, and join us for just $1 for your first 2 weeks of subscription. See you there! Well, welcome, Sarah, to the Awakened Goddess Show. I am absolutely so excited to have you here to talk about kind of like a spiritual weight loss. So welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Angela. I'm really excited to be here. It's going to be so great.
Yeah. So first off, I imagine you have a personal story why you were inspired to develop your program. So why don't we start there? Just so people get a little bit background and get to know you.
Yeah. I mean, it goes way back. So,
doesn't it always?
Way back. I mean, when I was probably, 10 years old, I remember looking around the classroom and realizing that I looked really different than the other girls in my class. I was chubbier and rounder and not as tall, and I was made fun of. And so I decided to go to Weight Watchers at 10 years old. Mm-hmm. So I remember walking into the meeting and feeling really out of place. And it was in this run down strip mall, in the middle of nowhere. And there was mice running through the parking lot. It was just not the most uplifting experience, I could have, as a 10-year-old. And that just started a pattern of, if you can lose weight, then you will be happy. And so I just developed this idea from a very young age, if I could just lose some weight, then I'll have more friends, or then my dance teacher will put me in the front row at my dance recital, or I'll get the lead in the musical. And I felt like my perfect life was always just out of reach.
Mm-hmm.
It was like just 10 pounds away.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't one of those people who could like successfully diet. I could diet for like 3 hours, and then I was just like into the ice cream or into the cookies because I thought that happiness was always 10 pounds away. I wasn't doing a lot to make my current life happy.
Sure.
And so food was my only source of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And so when, after being out of college for a couple of years, I had this moment when I used to work in advertising, and Dove chocolate was my client.
Oh boy.
And so we had chocolate around like all the time. And I remember there was this one moment where I took an entire bag of those Dove chocolate promises and I went into the supply closet of my ad agency and I stood in the corner and ate the entire bag of Dove chocolate promises.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure something was going really wrong and my relationship felt really flat and I was just lost. I hated my job. I was drinking all the time because that was like another source of happiness and freedom for me. And, and then I remember that I had probably like 10 chocolate pieces left. I threw them in the trash and then I went and fished them out of the trash because I just felt this like addictive pull to the food, a lot like an alcoholic would feel to alcohol or a drug addict to drugs.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment where I was like, whoa, this food has way too much power over me and something's really off. And I sort of decided, if I was going to lose weight by dieting, it probably would have happened by now. I'd been like going for this for like 15 years and it was time to just stop. And when I took dieting off the table, I remember looking around at my life and seeing like, oh my gosh, my life totally sucks. I thought for so many years that my weight was the source of my misery, but the reality was that my life was the source of my misery. And it's just so interesting. I think a lot of women can relate to this. We just really, really believe that if we could lose weight and have the perfect body, that everything would get better and that it's really our bodies that are making us miserable. And it's just not true. I had a great boyfriend who I barely paid any attention to. I hated my job. My friends didn't make me feel that great about myself at the time. I wasn't doing anything for fun. I wasn't getting outside. I was, all this stuff. So I finally decided to work on my life and I went back to dance class and I really worked on my relationship and I quit my job. And I made new friends and I started a spiritual practice, which was huge for me. And all of a sudden I, just started losing all this weight without even trying. And it was because I was filling up my happiness pool in my body through like actual activities that were real. And so I no longer needed food to fill that void. And then so I had this sort of dramatic weight loss. And then since then, my weight has fluctuated. I've gotten older. I've had a baby. I'm pregnant again. And, sort of the second phase of my work is really learning how to like ride the roller coaster of my body and my lifestyle, because it's not about just losing weight and keeping it off as a woman. It's about learning how to be happy in whatever body is coming up for you right now. And just being fiercely dedicated to taking care of yourself, regardless of what's going on in your life and your body, because it's just always going to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you were sharing your story, some of my own experiences came to mind, and it was really interesting because about the same time, around 10, 11, I can clearly remember everybody had to do like physical assessments at school.
Yes.
And I was great at the physical assessment part, but when they did, like, everybody had to get in line and you had to get on the scale. And then I felt like at that time thinking, oh my gosh, I weigh, more than these other girls, and how much that just like permeates our self-esteem, our identity, and how we carry that forward through our life. It's really amazing. And I too remember, I can remember that I would hide food in like the cupboards, or I would know where things were hidden, like the candy, or, I would just go and, yeah, it's like, wow, it's amazing how early that starts for us.
Yeah, really early. I remember a big moment for me was when I went to the doctor and we had those growth charts.
Mm-hmm.
And she showed me, she's like, this is you. And she pointed to the dot like high on the chart. And she's like, this is everyone else.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, my kids are never going to the doctor. I mean, they do. I'm married to a doctor, so they sort of have to go. But, it's just that stuff like that. It just sticks with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And well, congratulations on your second pregnancy.
Oh, thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's another, gosh, figuring out how to, like you say, ride that roller coaster of how your body changes and knowing what's normal. And I imagine that you have these urges to just want to eat different things so I would love to talk about that in a little bit. So, okay, so we're going to talk about the spirituality and how that fits into this whole equation of weight loss. So what is your idea about how that fits? Because I know you said you started your own spiritual practice and it's kind of shifted for you.
Yeah, I just think that spirituality is important for all areas of our life. For me, it's really been my compass, and it's been how I ground myself. And it's also been my source of magic and excitement. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people can have this view of spirituality where it's all about like meditation and being quiet and getting serious. And for me, the flavor of spirituality, like I really love, is more about like dancing wildly, in nature and experiencing the magic of fate and coincidence and all of that amazing sort of firework energy of spirituality. And when I can really tap into that, life just feels brighter, and it also feels at the same time calmer. And I'll talk a little bit more about like how I get there. But I think with food, you need to have a life that's more exciting than chocolate chip cookies, and I find that spirituality does that for me. And it makes me see how magical and divine each moment is. And I think and that people will get to that in different ways. For some people, it's meditating every morning. For me, I've been really into my altar recently. So I just try to sit with my altar every morning and I change it up. And I have this beautiful herb garden that I water right on my altar. And when I just, when I have this practice, or sometimes like I'll pull tarot cards, you just realize that everything just has this texture that's a little bit more interesting than when it was before I really tended to this part of my life.
Yeah, it really adds a lot more depth.
Yeah, a lot more depth. And that's all what food is. It's like the feeling of fullness is about experiencing like the depth of our core. It's like our gut instinct and our intuition and our core. It is inside of us. Our inner wisdom is inside of us. And in a lot of ways, food is like the physical feeling of connecting with that. But the reality is it doesn't do that.
Yeah.
But I think it comes from the same urge to just get in there.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I can think about food and, there's different like vibrations of food and like how heavy something is, right? And it seems like that in a way we can misuse food to ground ourselves.
Absolutely.
And feel that heavy, that density that maybe we are craving. And so, thinking about how we kind of numb our feelings through that process of, stuffing them down with the food and
yeah. And spirituality, it also just helps you process your feelings, and, cause what's interesting is that it's not that not eating is hard, or like, it's not that eating less is hard. It's that when you eat less, the feelings you've been avoiding are actually there. And that's the hard part, is being with your feelings unmasked, unnumbed, just you and everything you're feeling is really, really hard because a lot of us just haven't had practice of being with our feelings. And so I find that having a spiritual practice, it helps us be with our feelings, but also process our feelings in a healthier way, understand how we're feeling, all of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you talk a lot about waiting on the weight that,
yes.
Even in your intro or when you were talking about your own journey. So let's talk about how maybe we get into that pattern consciously or unconsciously. Because I know I do have a friend that very consciously, she for a while was waiting to lose weight, to date or different things. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I have this wonderful client who came to me because she said, I'm 33. I haven't had a boyfriend in a really long time. I really want to meet my husband, and I can't do that until I lose weight. And I said, okay, well, I disagree with you, but I would, love to have you in my program, and, we'll work through this together. So she was waiting on two different things. So as we were talking, she was waiting on her weight to date, and she was also waiting to start living her dream life until she found her future husband. Mm-hmm. So she had this idea. She's like, once I'm thin and I have a man, that's when I'm going to do all these really amazing activities. That's when we're going to move to the city I've always wanted to live in. Like, we'll find our dream house together. We'll go dancing, and I'll join a gardening club, and I'll go hiking. And she just had this list of activities. So when I'm thin, I will do XYZ. When I am dating, I will do XYZ. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is, and what I've mentioned is that when we have a certain life that we're meant to live, and we're deliberately not living that life, we just feel empty, and it can be the smallest little thing. For me, it was like it was a big glaring issue of I needed to quit my job, and I needed to be doing something totally different, and I needed to really completely change my relationship with my boyfriend, who I'm now married to. And for other people, it's small things like they just need to go to a gardening class, or they need to get to dance class, or they just need to freaking meditate every day, Mm-hmm. So for her, it was sort of a laundry list of a lot of small things that a lot of it had to revolve around having more fun in her life. Because right now, even though she wanted to lose weight, food was her only source of fun. And if you don't add in the fun, you're never going to be able to take out the food, because your body's like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is the only thing I am getting for fun. Do not take this away from me.
Yeah, it's like self-soothing.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So what we did was I basically gave her a fun protocol. We took that list of everything she was waiting to do when she was thin or she had a partner. And it was things like signing up for a salsa dancing class, going to a gardening class, going to a hike, wandering around the farmer's market and picking out food and then making herself a nice dinner, and she would invite a girlfriend over instead of her, fantasy of having her man there. And so she literally just did this for probably 3 weeks. And after 3 weeks, she ran into her next door neighbor at a bar near their house. She had lived next to this man for about a year and a half. And they've known each other. And he came over and he's like, what's been going on with you? She's like, what do you mean? He's like, I just see you leaving all the time. You seem so happy. And can I buy you a drink? Can we hang out? And he just started really pursuing her. Mm-hmm. And it was just because she was leaving her house a couple times a day. And he could just notice how she was glowing. Mm-hmm. And they're still together. It's been, 4 years.
Wow.
And they're very, very happy. And it's just I love that, because we think that we need to weigh less in order to live more, or that we need to find our partner in order to have the life we want. But it's actually, this is why I say we have to stop waiting on the weight, because it's actually the other way around. So that's why my program is called Live More, Weigh Less, because it's actually, we have to completely shift the paradigm. Mm-hmm. You have to create your whole beautiful dream life now in order for any of the other small things to come along. And what's so great is that at that point, she was so happy. She could sort of care less if this relationship worked out or not. And, she lost 20 pounds, but she was like, it didn't even matter. I already felt really sexy and beautiful and alive.
Love it.
So it's just, I have so many stories like that. I just think it's a really beautiful thing that happens when you really stop waiting on the weight.
Yeah. And like you said, we do this, we have the tendency to do this. We're waiting for something to happen before we live our life. And what's interesting is as you're talking about that, it all makes sense that when you're out and enjoying your life and doing whatever, then that's how you put yourself, you allow the universe or source or God or whoever to align things up for you and create those synchronistic moments, because you're in that flow and you're doing, like you said, you're living the life you're supposed to live.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you get into that flow, it's almost like you click in to this like really awesome separate roller coaster than you were on before. And I find that when I'm in that flow, all I have to do is ask for what I'm desiring. And it just shows up in like the most easy, beautiful ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you find that losing the weight versus keeping it off is easier or harder, or?
Well, it's sort of like it doesn't even matter anymore, if that makes sense. The way I've experienced it in my life is that I'm just not a slave to it anymore. And like, there'll be some times where like, I'll look in the mirror, I'm like, oh, like I look like thinner than I usually do right now. Cool. And then there are other times where I'm like, oh, it looks like I've gained like 10 or 15 pounds. Okay, no problem. And I'll like take a moment, and if I feel like kind of gross or yucky or heavy in my body, I'll take a moment and I'll say, because normally what would happen is I would be like, oh my God, you're so fat. What's wrong with you? What are you doing? We need to buckle down. You need to stop doing this. Your husband isn't going to want to have sex with you. And no. We can be so mean. And now I just go, oh, honey, to my body, something going on. Do you need something? What's happening in my life that's maybe causing a weight gain? And so it's sort of like a sign that tells me, oh, maybe things are a little out of whack. And then I really take it as a beautiful gift. Like, oh, I realize like I haven't really been getting to dance class as much as I really want to. And that will be so fun for me to do that. And I feel so good when I move my body in a way that feels really, magical and spiritual and fun. And so it's not about like the ease of losing weight and keeping it off, or like not gaining weight. It just, your body becomes more of like a sign to what you need to focus on in your life, and less about this way to be beating yourself up or like giving yourself a trophy all the time.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like this approach really is more about creating success for yourself, focusing on the positives versus, like you say, beating yourself up or punishing yourself by restricting what you're eating, or just, making yourself go to the gym and just make it a really painful experience.
Yeah, I just feel like there's no point, and what's so interesting is that what can happen sometimes is when I tell people that I like don't care if they lose weight or not, like I'm not actually about weight loss. They automatically think that I think it's okay to just like eat whatever you want and never work out. You know what I mean? But there's this whole third way of being, which is about taking amazing, beautiful, nurturing care of our bodies, so it's not about like going to the gym and eating a certain way, but it is about like moving your body a couple days a week. And of course, eating a lot of vegetables, because vegetables are amazing and they make you feel awesome, but it's doing it in a way that you would take care of your child. It's so funny because it's so obvious to us that we would take care of our children and want them to go outside and play and give them healthy food, but we don't want them to lose weight. we just want them to be happy and healthy. And I want all of us to realize that we can put that same sort of energy and attention on our own bodies without it needing to be either this like strict, rigid thing or completely ignoring our bodies. That makes sense.
Yeah. So going back to that inner mean girl, the inner critic.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with her? Because boy, when we try to do something new or something that's maybe out of the norm, he or she will certainly come up in full force.
Yeah. Full force.
So,
yeah. I mean, especially when, it's interesting, especially with driven women, we'll try something, and if we're not a master at it within like 2 hours, we get really upset, So,
it's like we go on the full force juice fast for.
Yeah, I know, it's like crazy. They're like, why can't I be like the best juice drinker ever? So in my program, Live More Way Less, what always happens is in the first week, someone's like, a big thing of what I talk about is eating without distractions, because it just helps us recognize, tasting our food and enjoying food and paying attention to our hunger levels and everything. They said like, oh my God, like I couldn't eat without distractions today, and I messed up during lunch and no. And I'm like, ladies, like we are in kindergarten right now. And at the end of the program, you will graduate from high school, but you can't expect yourself to like walk into kindergarten knowing calculus.
Yeah.
It just takes time. And it's so interesting because again, it's something that we're all brought up with to give ourselves time to learn. It's why you have like a full year of school every year and why you don't start with like the hardest book on the first day, And I want all of us to bring in that ease and compassion to when we're learning new things. But with our inner critic, I don't think that voice ever really goes away. I think you just have to make your inner voice louder. My friend Amy Ehlers, who just wrote this really great book, The Inner Mean Girl Reform School, talks about replacing your inner mean girl with your inner wise self. And I really love that. And that just, brings it back to spirituality. The more we can have a regular practice and the more we can bring that into our life, like our spiritual voice becomes louder and more recognizable, and like we want to listen to her more than our inner mean girl. And what is so interesting, something that I do with my clients in my program is having them start to recognize what their inner critic sounds like. Because she has a tone of voice, she has a way she speaks. Sometimes she sounds like our mother or our first grade teacher or the mean girl on the playground. And when we can really understand her voice and then understand this other voice, we can start to hear the difference and not start to believe that the inner critic is actually the one who's holding all the truth. If that makes sense. And the other thing that I think is really important to realize is that our inner critic is really there for a benefit. She is actually really nervous that we're going to, gain 100 pounds and not be healthy, or really nervous that we're going to forget some of our friends or that we're not going to be a good daughter. It's just that she's maybe not going about it in the best way, but it's the only way she knows to get our attention. And so a lot of times, like what I'll do if my inner critic is telling me like, Sarah, you've been eating a lot of ice cream recently and what's wrong with you? And, you're going to gain a lot of weight and then Jonathan's not going to love you anymore, and you're going to lose your job and, all this stuff because it all still comes up.
Oh yeah.
I'll say to her like, okay, so honey, what are you worried about really?
Yeah.
What are you like really worried is going to happen? And she'll be like, oh, well, I'm worried that you're not going to be healthy and that you're not going to take care of yourself and that, you're ignoring your relationship or, that the business is going to fall apart. And I'll just say like, I totally hear you. And like, I'm handling it,
And got it covered.
Yeah, exactly. This is what healthy is looking like for me right now. And this is what my relationship looks like right now. And this is the direction that the business is going in. And then I can sort of hear like a sigh of like, okay, I'll be back tomorrow to piss you off, but like for now, I'm like feeling good. Yeah. So I think that's, you know, there's a lot of people who just say like, tell her to shut up or go away or like, you know, push her down. And sometimes I feel like, well, maybe she has like something sort of valuable to say and she's just really kind of concerned.
Well, and that just creates resistance energetically. It's
yes,
like this
exactly.
push-pull thing. And if you're resisting that inner critic and trying to stifle it, then it's just going to get louder and more pissed off.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah. And it seems like in working with clients, in what I do, it's that underlying all that, it just wants to keep you safe and it wants to be loved and approved of. So it's like, yeah, it's like we just want to kind of help that part of ourselves get what it needs and not through food or sex or drugs or whatever your drug of choice. Yeah. So how do you incorporate the spirituality piece in your program, Live More, Way Less?
That's a good question. So it's actually the last part of my program. It's how I close the program. It's a 6-week program. And so the last week is spirituality. And I do that because a lot of the women, and like it's changing, you know, the group changes, you know, over time, but a lot of the women come to my program aren't necessarily like super comfortable with spirituality, or it's not something they've really thought about before. And they don't always like really see the connection between their bodies and spirituality. Because a lot of us, like all we know is like going to church every Sunday growing up, and it feels very like separate and something you do once a week.
And it's like, what does that have to do with weight loss?
Right. Exactly. So it's a nice, and I sort of like, you know, I'll like sprinkle it in the whole way. And then what I do in my program is I really just give the women like 100 different ways in to spirituality. And because I believe that everyone has a different tool, everyone has a different way in. And if you're listening and you're feeling like, you know, I'm not really sure about spirituality, or I haven't really found like my thing, just like keep looking, and it changes all the time.
Well, and I think that, you know, how I think of spirituality is it's like what you were talking about earlier. It's like what, those firework moments, you know, how is it your spirit is connecting to the world or whatever that's outside of yourself? So it can be as simple as walking in nature. So, yeah.
And so that's really fun. And it's so fun for me to watch the women sort of like wake up to a new way of seeing things. It's really such an incredible experience. And I also really teach them to, you know, ask for help. This is something that Janine Roth and Marianne Williamson also talk about when it comes to food. But it's about, you know, when you're feeling like I could eat everything in my refrigerator right now.
Yeah.
And you're just in that space. It just helps to sit on the floor and say, you know, God, Buddha, Mother Mary, Jesus, you know, intuition, inner knowing, wise self, like whatever that is for you. You know, I don't know what to do. I'm having a hard time. Will you just be with me for a minute? And just realizing that you're not alone, that there's, you know, an energy that's larger than you can really save you for some really tricky situations. And I just find that when we can do that, you know, it just helps ground us in the moment and in our strength and what's really important. Because when we want to go for all the food in the refrigerator, it's just because we're feeling frantic and alone and anxious, and we're looking for something to ground us. And so in my program, I teach the women how to find that in another way. And for some people, it's like sitting on the floor and asking for help. For others, it's, you know, maybe they've created an altar, or they just go pick up their tarot cards, or, you know, they pray, or they journal, or they just walk outside, or they smell some flowers. You know, there's so many different ways to just feel connected. And when you can do that, you just don't need food to feel connected anymore. It just becomes a way of nourishing ourselves.
So, okay, here's a really practical question about this, because I'm thinking about there are delicious foods out there. And I love to juice, and I find that I have to juice first thing in the morning. Otherwise, you know, I don't,
Mm-hmm.
because other things taste really good too. What I'm wondering is how do we deal with those things that just taste so damn good that we just want to, it's like, no, 3 bites is not going to be enough. I just like the flavor of this so much.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that?
Yeah. So, I think it's about, okay, so let me ask you, so what is the thing you're thinking of right now
Oh
that just
gosh.
tastes so good?
We'll say Jamocha almond fudge ice cream.
Okay, awesome. So if it were me, and I am also I'm an ice cream fanatic, I think it's all about, because we're going for that food because it tastes so good. We're going for this amazing pleasure experience. So the idea is to intensify the pleasure experience as much as possible so that we're really getting what we need from the ice cream eating experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about getting a beautiful bowl and putting 2 pretty good scoops of ice cream into the bowl. Because this isn't about just having 3 bites. Have some freaking ice cream, but it doesn't mean you have to eat the entire pint because that'll make you feel sick. So it's about putting 2 scoops in your bowl and maybe sitting outside. And the key is having no distractions.
Yeah. Not sitting in front of the TV.
Not sitting in front of the TV, not having a phone, not having a magazine. Because what happens is that if we're in front of the TV, what happens is our brain goes, I thought I was going to get up to a 10 on the pleasure scale from this ice cream, but I actually only got up to a 4 because I was really distracted by the television and I didn't really notice that I was eating the ice cream. So in order to get up to a 10, I must need to eat more ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense.
Yeah. So you just really have to allow the ice cream to give you its full power by you giving it your full attention.
Yeah,
sense?
So really creating sensual experience out of using all of your senses to really, like you say, expand and fully embody the experience of the ice cream or the eclair or whatever happens to be.
Yeah, and feel the spiritual energy of the eclair or the ice cream. It's when you eat, especially dairy, if you're really paying attention, you can almost taste the sun and the flowers and the bees that were around the grass that the cows were eating, and the milk it creates and the sugar. There's so much energy in food.
Yeah.
And when you become really sensitive to that energy, food either becomes even more amazing and pleasurable, or you notice this food has a really low energy. And what you thought was your favorite food in the entire world, actually you can't stand anymore. Yeah, because you're just paying attention.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because just recently somebody told me that exact thing, that she became so sensitive. And when she ate dairy, she felt like she could hear the cows mooing. And so it completely turned her off to eating dairy at all.
Yeah, and I love cows, so that's an amazing experience for me. But, everyone is different. I used to love Tasty Delight. It was my favorite food in the entire world. It's that fat-free frozen yogurt that you can I think only get in New York City. And I ate it probably twice a day for years. And I remember I sat down one time. It was probably the only time I actually took the time to taste it and to not be on my phone or to not eat it in front of the TV. And I sat on a sunny day on a park bench and I put the Tasty Delight in my mouth and I was like, this is disgusting. I cannot believe I've been eating this for 2 years. This is so gross. And I threw it away and I've never had it again.
Interesting.
So I think everyone just needs to go back and just retry everything, because you never know what's actually really gross that you think is amazing because you're just not paying attention.
Mm-hmm. Well, isn't it interesting that sometimes even when we don't like something or we make ourselves it's like we've hit that point where we've had enough and we continue eating it. It's almost like we're subconsciously punishing ourselves in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, it's interesting because there is this like element of self-sabotage that a lot of us can like get caught up in, but I do think that it's more about the comfort, and the benefit of overeating. Like, cause there are a lot of, quote unquote benefits to overeating. And a lot of it just has to do with like feeling the love and companionship and connection and relaxation of just like putting spoonful after spoonful of ice cream in our mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm going to be looking at that ice cream in a whole new light.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad.
So you mentioned that you have an altar and that I love that you have a little herb garden on your altar that you water. I'm just like picturing this. I want one.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm wondering what else you do like for your daily spiritual practice to help you stay really connected and stay on this path.
Yeah. It's, it kind of changes all the time. I sort of go with what I am in the mood for in a way. I love working with my Osho tarot deck. It's a Zen, I think it's Zen Buddhist tarot deck. And I pull cards probably like 2 or 3 times a day. My husband and I have been pulling them at night recently just to get connected before we go to sleep. He was super resistant for a while. Not resistant, but he was like, okay, I'll do this for you, but this is like not really my jam. But now he's so into it, which is so great.
Yeah.
And I belong to this school called the 13 Moon Oracles, and it's about the 13 goddess archetypes, and they all line up with the different phase of the moon. And I love, there's goddess archetypes like the priestess, the great mother, the wise woman, which is who I'm really trying to connect with right now. And she's an herbalist and has the herb garden, which is why I have an herb garden on my altar. And, the initiator, goddess of death, I can go on and on, but it's really fun for me to like learn about those different archetypes and think about how they're present in my life and, how I can embody more of like that certain like feminine flavor. And for me, for so long, religion and spirituality was very masculine and it felt really boring to me. And, this practice that I'm doing right now, it just feels really fun and magical and feminine and witchy, and it just gets me really jazzed about everything. And so I think like learning about different spiritual practices and archetypes is another really fun way in. And so I have, these beautiful books and these beautiful cards, and I just I sit with them and I kind of geek out on it a little bit. And sometimes I'll go a couple of weeks without even paying attention. But whenever I'm feeling down and disconnected, I've now trained myself to go to that as opposed to going to food. Yeah. Yeah. It just takes time, takes practice.
Yeah. Takes discipline and
yeah.
That word that for the longest time, I thought it was just like such a bad, mean word, discipline.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. I like to think about it like more, it's like, it's a practice, you have to practice continuing to go back. And then I just realized over time, I feel better when I dive into my spirituality than when I dive into the ice cream. I just feel better. Mm-hmm. So it's all about just following how you feel.
Nice.
Yeah. Because following how you feel is actually a lot more powerful than just being thin. That's not actually, when you think about it, a motivating factor in our lives. Mm-hmm. If it was, we would all be thin.
Yeah.
Well,
and who wants to be thin and miserable?
Exactly. And that's what happens to a lot of people. I had a woman come on a call the other day and she said, I just lost 40 pounds and I feel nothing the way I thought I was going to. I am so clear that I really thought this was the missing piece and it's so not.
Wow.
And I felt for her, but the big part of me was like, yes, it's like, exactly. This is what I've been talking about.
Yeah. Now we can have some fun.
I know. Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So what is a practical tip that the listeners can start using right away to help them on their journey to shifting this for themselves?
So what I would do is think of something easy that's fun or like fun and spiritual, so maybe it's picking up a magazine or getting your nails done or even like watching a funny video on YouTube or pulling a tarot card, something maybe you can do in your house, smell a flower, write it down, just the one thing, and put it on your refrigerator. So next time you want to go for food when you're not hungry, there's, obviously we need to eat when we're hungry, but there are all those times when we want to grab a cookie because we're just being unconscious about it, or we want to have ice cream because we're bored or lonely or stressed out. Just try, instead of eating the food, to go do that activity that you paste on your refrigerator. Mm-hmm. And if you want to eat the food afterwards, no problem. Again, like we're in kindergarten, but just try that activity first, because what I want you to experience is that activity is actually going to give you so much more joy than eating the ice cream. Mm-hmm. And there's a time when like we want joy from ice cream, but it just can't be our only source. It needs to be like the 100th thing on the list, not the only thing on the list.
Yeah. Love it. Awesome. Yeah. Well, so how can people find out more about you and connect with you and learn more about your program and all that good stuff?
Oh, thanks. So, I've created the Live More, Way Less lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that anyone can join. You don't have to join the program. And the way to become part of the lifestyle and really learn about it is by going to livemorewayless.com. And, I have this 3-part video series, and it's totally free. And I just give you my 6 steps joining the lifestyle. We talk about fun and food and body image and career and spirituality and love. And I just give like a few like really practical, easy things to adopt into your life so you can start to really shift the way you approach taking care of your body. So again, you just go to livemorewayless.com and you can get that completely for free. And then there are, ways to find out about my program and stuff once you watch the videos. But I think it's most important just to watch the videos and join the lifestyle and just get started, because I've just experienced, and, with there's been thousands of women who've gone through the lifestyle, and it's just been really, really powerful for people. There's just been so much freedom and happiness and just this like emotional weight, lifted off of all of us that we've been carrying around since we were like little girls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how fantastic would it be just to enjoy your life more, live more, and then naturally just drop the excess weight.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Like perfect.
It's perfect. And it's so great because, I really believe that we all have a different ideal set point, so I always say like, this isn't about looking like your 23-year-old self or your best friend or your favorite celebrity. It's about discovering, your perfect body for where you are in this life phase and your constitution and your specific lifestyle. Cause like for me, like when I'm not pregnant, like I just choose, like I have wine every night. And that's like, I love it. It's actually like almost a spiritual practice for me. I don't have I just have a glass of wine. It's not like I'm getting wasted every night, but I'm just like, I'm probably never going to be a size 4 drinking wine every night, but that's the lifestyle that I have chosen. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just it can be really fun and liberating for people to go through the process of really consciously thinking, what lifestyle am I choosing for myself? Yeah. And then to see, where your body ends up and just learning how to love and accept her right where she is.
Awesome. Love it. Ooh.
Oh, thanks.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Sarah, for joining me today. This was absolutely a fun and really enlightening conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Yeah. It was really great being here with you. It was really such a joy.
Yay. I love it. So, and now I'd love to hear from you guys. The best discussions happen after the show over at theawakenedgoddess.com. So get yourself over there and leave a comment right now. Did you enjoy this episode? If so, subscribe to the show. And of course, it would be amazing if you shared this with all of your friends. And if you want even more incredible resources, come on over to theawakenedgoddess.com and sign up for email updates. And until next time, goodbye, everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Awakened Goddess. I hope you enjoyed today's show and took away something you can start using in your life right away. For more spiritual insights and to listen to more episodes, subscribe to The Awakened Goddess Show at thegoddessnextdoor.com and discover wisdom that'll change your life.